evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, February the 16th, 2015. Our clerk tonight is Mr. Jackson, Mr. Chris Jackson, and I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. I would like to start off, Mr. Jackson, any late items?
Thank you, Worship. Item 8C, there's a delegation from Mr. Fred Taylor to be added to the legislation related to council meeting minutes. And also under item 9C, removal of two items. It'd be 5035 Rihanna Place and 1240 Nanaimo Lakes Road. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Seconder? Second? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move adoption of the agenda as amended. Is that done?
Nope. Carry on.
So moved.
Do we have a seconder? Seconder. Thank you. And I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Those minutes. Did I say the agenda? I meant minutes. Thank you.
You're going to get the hang of this one of these days, eh?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. It's with great pleasure tonight that we have a very important task to do. But I wanted to start off with just a little something that I found. Actually, one of our clerks, Sharon Winter, was down in the bowels of City Hall, and she found something that I found quite interesting. It was the minutes of the 21st meeting of the City Council of the Municipality of the Corporation of the City of Nanaimo, held in the Council Chambers, City Hall, on Monday, June 24th, 1940, at 7:30 p.m. His Worship Mayor V.B. Harrison, Alderman Salter, Greaves, Hindmark, Kerr, and Muir. The minutes started out by saying, the minutes of the previous meeting were adopted. In opening the meeting, His Worship, the Mayor, referred to the fact that Alderman Salter was present in the uniform of His Majesty's forces, which was unique in that he had not heard of such a similar occasion, and suggested some recognition should be made of the fact. Moved by Alderman Muir, seconded by Alderman Kerr, that the freedom of the city be conferred on Alderman Salter and that he be given unconditional leave of absence as may be necessary to carry out his duties. The motion carried unanimously. We do not give away this honor lightly. Tonight, we honor another person, Diana K. Johnstone, Freeman of the City, today's date. To quote her, she says, some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, others make it happen. For over 30 years, Diane's presence and commitment has touched the lives of many individuals and continues to touch the community as a whole. She's a true leader in every sense of the word and generates leadership qualities in others while being creative and rising to the occasion. One of Diane's beliefs is that volunteers can and do change the world. And as a result of this belief, she's made it her life passion to volunteer. Diane has been a volunteer for many events and occasions, such as, and some of you may want to go and get a haircut while we're reading this list. Tourism Nanaimo, BC Games Mission Staff, Salmon Festival, Canada Games from 1987 to 1993, Director of the 1987 Canadian Water Ski Championships, Director of the 1997 BC Special Olympics Softball Championships, Director of the 1986 and 2005 BC Disability Games, Operations Manager for the 1985 and 2002 BC Summer Games, 2007 Nanaimo Seniors Games, 2008 Cultural Capital of Canada Committee, Reception Chair of the 2014 BC Summer Games, and that's only just begun. She was involved in committees at the Regional District of Nanaimo, Progress Nanaimo, School District Joint Use Committee, Municipal Insurance Association of BC, Parks, Recreation and Culture Chair, Nanaimo Cultural Committee, Yes Nanaimo Committee, the Social Planning Committee, Cultural Capitals of Canada Board, member of the Port Theatre Board of Directors, Harbourfront Centre Society, supporter of the Nanaimo Museum, Vancouver Island Symphony, past president of the Nanaimo Ladies Curling Club, past president of the Malaspina Choir, recipient of the BC Community Achievement Award in 2008. Diane is a true ambassador of our city, Nanaimo, and on behalf of Council, I am very honored and privileged to present Diana with the city's most distinguished recognition, Freeman of the City, this evening. Councillor Johnston, to the front of the room, please. First of all, this is for you. Thank you. I expect there are people that are going to want to be taking pictures. Now, if I follow Lance Sullivan, he actually wants these to be down so we don't get a glare. Ladies and gentlemen, the highest honor that we could give a person in the city is Freeman of the City. Congratulations, Diana Johnston. Do you want to go to the podium or do you want to do it here? Please, do it here. Do it here. Di. Oh! You been hanging around with George Anderson again? Okay, here you go. Do you want me to hold this?
Sure, you can hold it for me. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you so very much for the tremendous honor you have bestowed on me this evening. Thank you so much, my council, for the unanimous decision and my wonderful city staff. It is certainly a proud and humbling pleasure or milestone in my life to be unanimously chosen by my council peers to receive the designation as Freeman of the City, along with Muriel McKay Ross, Margaret Strongatharm, Chuck Wong, Bob Roledge, and Pete Maffeo, to name a few. I am not a native daughter. However, from the time my family arrived here on transfer with the RCM Police in 1982, I knew I was home and would never want to leave. My wonderful husband of 54 years, Jack, decided to retire after serving the force for 30 years in order that I could have a chance to volunteer, event plan, and recreate with other Nanaimoites. All my dear family are here tonight, and I'm so tremendously proud of them. And thank you for allowing me that time. They learned to cook. They've been very supportive, and I'm most grateful. I would especially like to thank those that coordinated their efforts to provide the nomination package to council for consideration. Former Mayor Graham Roberts, who's present this evening, President and CEO of BC Games Kelly Mann, President of the 2002 Nanaimo BC Games Society and Nanaimo Gyro Club member Dave Bakes, President of the Nanaimo 2014 BC Games and retired RCMP Superintendent Jeff Lott, Jack Doan, 2002 Games Director and member of the Nanaimo Yes Committee, Debbie Truman, manager of the Nanaimo Museum, and Evelyn O'Rourke, former Tourism Citizen of the Year and recipient of the Nanaimo Honor in Culture Award. Amongst the letters of nomination was a letter written by the late, great Larry McNabb, one of us, who nominated me for the 2008 BC Community Achievement Award, a wonderful friend who I had the privilege of serving with on the Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission and on my first term on council. Thank you especially to the Nanaimo Gyro Club and President Jim Thompson, who sponsored the application to council and who have come out this evening in friendship, as it is their mandate, to join with my family to witness this wonderful celebration. I am certainly most grateful to all of you. All those I have mentioned have been great friends and mentors over the past 35 years. It was a privilege and joy to work with you, have fun with you, in joining hundreds of volunteers, Nanaimo's ambassadors, in serving on nonprofit societies and presenting games and events that created such community pride and helped showcase our wonderful harbor city to the rest of the province and beyond. But of all the many colleagues and friends who have inspired me to make a difference, there is none other than my mother, Mary, who is here tonight. She has always instilled in me the importance of service before self. And at the wonderful age of 95, continues to serve her community of Duncan by singing in the United Church Choir, still like a lark, going and playing bridge to shut-ins in the seniors' homes, and being as a part of another chorus that does hymn singing in seniors' homes on Sunday evenings. I'm so proud of you, my mom. In closing, a thank you to the City of Nanaimo, who sponsored the reception this evening, and especially Marilyn Smith, who has worked so hard behind the scenes to make tonight so very special. The Freeman of the City Award that I have been so honored to receive will always be cherished, and hopefully I will be able to continue to serve Nanaimo along with my fellow citizens for many years to come. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Diana Johnstone. Got the little box for you too. Do you want the little box? On every crowd, Jack. So we thought we would call a couple-minute recess until so that everybody can that wants to leave can leave now, unless you want to stay with us for the next 3 to 4 hours. We're going to start the meeting in about 2 minutes.
Thanks for giving up, Jack.
Councillor Yoakum, can you swing that door closed on your way back? All right, next item on the agenda for those who are remaining. Item number 5B, Mr. Kim Smythe, President and CEO, Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, to provide a presentation regarding Council's goals and guiding principles. And I understand that the chair of the board is going to actually give the presentation. It's Ms. Mary Ann Turley. Please. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. This is really difficult to follow Diana Johnson's presentation and the wonderful things she's done and what a role model to us. And we as the Chamber extend our very warm congratulations. We're so fortunate to have individuals like her in our community.
We're very
really
proud of her.
appreciate it. Absolutely. So we wanted to thank you, Your Worship, to present the Chamber's views over that we have for the next 4 years. That we're able to do that this evening. And we're so excited to have Council now in a 4-year term and the opportunities for change that every election presents. During the election, the Chamber of Commerce conducted a community awareness campaign with the goal of increasing the voter turnout by 30%. With the help of other community organizations, Nanaimo actually met that goal, a 30% increase in voting day turnout. That's fabulous. And we as the Chamber are proud that we were able to help out with that. As Council has been made aware, the Chamber operates independent of public funding, which permits us to bring the position of the business community before you without bias or concerns over funding discrimination. For the first time, Council is starting a 4-year term. We ask you to think very hard about the legacy that you want to leave at the end of those 4 years and work your way towards the legacy from today onward. We offer the Chamber's election platform as guiding principles and philosophies for Council. And we'll start out with leadership and teamwork. The Chamber asks Council to set a clear direction and define the vision it intends to pursue for the city. Council needs to seek consensus with the community and collaborate with its partner to meet goals more efficiently and achieve its vision. Maximize core services and efficiencies. Don't spend what you don't need to. There are many models for program and service reviews that can help us ensure the city budget is delivering the greatest value for the services demanded by the taxpayer. Transparency and community input. Every candidate committed to open communication. Now, Council members need to seek meaningful, ongoing input from residents in every format and through every medium. Council should be engaging in two-way communications and adopt strategies to reflect community input in policymaking. Be informed, engaged, and responsible. The community needs you to focus on making informed decisions, permitting you to vote on the value of a proposition, not the politics of it, especially in the heat of the moment. Strive for community prosperity. Initiate policies and promote healthy private, public, and not-for-profit business activity, partnering with organizations that help obtain results. Job creation and a strong local economy are based on these sectors' sustained health and growth. There are 6 action items prioritized by the Chamber for incoming Council. Our membership includes many individuals and businesses equipped to make your job easier. Chamber members would like to play a continuing role in supporting Council in these areas. And these are the areas of priorities. Updating the 2012 to 15 Corporate Strategic Plan to keep pace with Council's vision for the coming term. The Chamber would assist in integrating the principles of Successful Cities program against the update, again to the updated plan. Leading the Green Tape Committee, a mayor's task force or standing committee seeking areas where municipal processes can be streamlined and made more user-friendly. The goal is to remove bureaucratic barriers and ease congestion. Reviewing development and building permit procedures. Compare with best practices from other communities, seek efficiencies, and define processes to meet stakeholders' needs. Overhauling the sign bylaws, with the Chamber taking a lead position on a mayor's task force to reduce duplication of regulations and collaborate on goals for reasonable legislation and aesthetic oversight. Core review, thanks for moving ahead so quickly on a process that the Chamber has been promoting for years. Let's make sure we define achievable goals in the discovery process and choose externally guided review that includes broad community and stakeholder participation. Most importantly, we must follow through on action items. The Chamber looks forward to playing a role and being part of this. Relaxing the current inordinate burden on commercial property owners by freezing tax increases on commercial ratepayers until 2020. We have a comprehensive presentation we'd like to make to the Committee of the Whole and the Finance Committee, where we can demonstrate the positive value proposition of this long overdue term. As your community partner, we look forward to continuing working closely with Council to ensure a healthy and prosperous future for Nanaimo. The Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce is fully committed to its philosophy of better community through better business.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, motion to receive the delegation. So moved.
Thank
Seconder?
you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. I expect we will.
Staff has a copy of that for us, I believe.
Yes. We'd like a copy of the presentation. Thank you very much. Next item, Corporate Services, number 8A, 2015-2019 Financial Plan Review. Purpose is to introduce Financial Plan Review Bylaw 2015, number 7206. Staff recommendation is on page 2 of the green sheets. Do we wish to introduce this item? Ms. Duncan?
At the last, we were directed, or staff was directed to come back with a budget bylaw after the January 30th meeting,
Yes.
Showing a 1% tax increase for 2015. So we had made the specific changes that we had recommended to get to that 1%. Those changes, if you'd like me to just quickly review them, was removing the 3 additional RCMP members in 2015 only, reducing management consulting and staff training budgets, and also eliminating the Parks and Rec master plan, reducing the Lindley Valley Park development project. So we had total budget reductions of $744,000, brought it down to the 1% tax increase. That 1% is for asset management.
Thank you.
If I would just add to that, Your Worship, that the 3 goals that we had when we were looking at the 1% reduction were to maintain current service levels, reduce operating expenditures that would not impact the services to city residents, and to eliminate projects that may be impacted by the core review process. All of which we believe is something that Council will want to look at during the core review process, and those are the areas that we had looked for the reductions in.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through you to staff, I suppose. I just want to be clear in my mind that we would still have opportunity to modify this budget going forward until May.
Your Worship, it's always up to Council's prerogative if you'd like to amend the budget at any time. The challenge we have, of course, is we're looking for some sort of approval so that we can get on with expenditures, which I think is a little different than you're talking to, but you have opportunities as we go forward to amend the budget, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a recommendation on page 16. Council received for information a report pertaining to the financial plan bylaw 2015 number 7206. Do I have a mover? Move it. Seconder? Any further discussions? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this coming forward, of course. My interests lie in 2015 expenditures or spending has clearly already started. We're almost concluding the first quarter of 2015. I completely acknowledge and recognize that the Core Services Review has created a situation where many of our initiatives will rely on the Core Services Review results. And given that we haven't created the terms of reference for the core review yet, then I think it's important for me to understand that which programs for 2016 would, if we don't get to the 2016 budget by the end of 2015, would already start the process for spending. So my position, I don't want to start spending for 2016 until we've completed the 2016 annual operating budget, which I hope, and I've mentioned before, that we do in the last quarter of 2015. And I completely acknowledge that the Core Services Review is going to have something to say about that. But I need to hear that that is a goal and an objective of not only our council, but if that direction is required in some other way, that I'd like to hear from our city manager that you need some other type of direction.
Well, Your Worship, the 2016 budget, of course, we won't start spending that money until you approve it, or we come for earlier approvals depending on where we're at with the budget for 2016. A lot of that will depend, of course, on the core review, how quickly council is able to conclude a core review and then get through recommendations. I personally suspect that it's going to be a challenge. A core review is going to take the better part of the year to complete, and then you'll have to make decisions about implementing, which will run right into probably the next budget year. So I'm not optimistic that we'll be in a position to be dealing with the 2016 budget without the core review having been completed. But that would be certainly a goal that we're going to be working with council, and it's up to council, I guess, to set that agenda and work to it.
Thank you. I'll follow up if I may, please. The budget as we see it, or the increases that are reflected here, do not include anything from the regional component.
No, they don't. What we've done is the taxes that we collect from the region or collect on their behalf and then remit over to them, what we did is assumed the same as in 2014. We will get their information. It has no effect on our property taxation at all, and we will get their new information about the taxes that we collect on their behalf in April after they've passed their budget.
But Your Worship, just to be clear, there's a requisition that would come for our contribution to that budget. That's not something that we would debate or have a say in. That's something that you at the board table would determine what it is, and they would then requisition the money from the city of Nanaimo.
So the purpose for my question is just so that the viewers understand that there's a greater number than just what's here in front of us tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through the staff here, two questions, if you don't mind. The three RCMP officers that we took off in 2015, are they going to be added to the 2016 that is included in the 1.5% increase or not included?
Okay, the plan five-year plan originally included 19 new RCMP officers, with 3 in 2015, 5 in 2016, 4, and so on, for a total of 19 over the 5 years. What we did is we removed, at Council's direction, the 3 in 2015 only, so that this 5-year plan for years 2 to 5 still reflects the additional officers in years 2 to 5, a total of 16.
Okay, so in 2016, there's going to be 4 new officers.
correct.
That's included in the 1.5% increase?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in light of the Chamber's presentation, do we have a number of what the taxes would increase on the residential side if we were to follow direction of the Chamber with a 0% increase on the business side?
Your Worship,
We just had that presentation 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It would be highly unlikely.
No. Okay. I just didn't know the like rough ratio of what it was, if it was possible.
I don't have that. It's about a factor of at least 3 to make it equal. So it's quite substantial, and we would have to analyze that and come back to discuss that with council.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Yocum.
Thank you, Worship. I'm in reading this, but reading the recommendation, I'm going to have a really difficult time accepting the recommendation from the year 2017, but also of a 4% increase, but also from the fact not being involved in the conversation on this 2015 when I hear numerous police officers were reduced, etc., for the fact it was on one of those afternoon or morning meetings, which I don't believe we should have discussed it unless we were all available. That financial, when you guys had this conversation. And public safety is a concern. If we got to do reductions, I'd like to really outline everywhere we have space to do the reductions. So I'm going to have a really challenging time supporting this for numerous reasons, but most of all with the 2017, I'm a little leery seeing a 4% in there, plus what Councillor Bestwick stated, there's going to be more on top of this with our other duties. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. A couple terms ago, we started off having meetings in June and July and worked through. I know some of my older peers were a little disappointed when I recommended it and tried to get the goal of early adoption. That's, I think, from my perspective, we'll be into May, basically 5 months into our budget before we adopt it. And I believe we could, in fact, set a goal to early adopt our budgets. That would mean council meeting maybe in summer and some of the times. And I'm glad to know that we're including some of that RDN requisition. But this year, I think we're looking right now at about 7% increase in RDN taxes as across the board. So it's important that we understand that. But for me, trying to get the goal of early adoption, with the understanding that there may be some changes after that, but an early adoption would be the thing. And that means we have to get to work earlier and work harder on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I omitted to ask a question. In the report on page 23, the third to last paragraph, and it just indicates, although it does not impact 2015 property taxes, a decision on whether to proceed with the fire hall number 6 in 2015 does have a significant effect on future taxes. In 2016, the increased costs for staffing are close to $1 million. The fire plan will be the subject of a separate discussion at the January 30th, 2015 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is this an item that will be, I'm just curious as to why this is included in this report on February the 16th.
Well, Your Worship, it was one of the key decisions that needed to occur in 2015 in order to deal with the issue that Councillor Yocum talked about in 2017. The 4 point whatever percent increase in 2017 is actually the staffing for the fire hall, which would be built if council had to proceed it this year with the construction of the fire hall. So that decision was needed to defer it off and wait for a core review to review the appropriateness of council's service level in that regard.
Yep.
Page 22 and 23 were an old report. It was generated for this agenda. It was a January 30th report.
That's correct. Dated January 30th. No further speakers. On the recommendation that we received for information, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Yocum opposed. Motion passes. Would somebody care to move the bylaws? No?
Do you want me to read
Read
them
it out, please, yes.
What page are we on here? Right on the top there. Okay. Okay. I move that the financial plan bylaw 2015 number 7206 to confirm and adopt the 2015 to 2019 financial plan pass first reading.
Seconded. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Well, Your Worship, if we had the ability 2 weeks ago to establish and define and find $744,000, which is the equivalent of 0.8% of our annual operating budget over the course of a couple of weeks, and by removing 3 additional members at a savings of $326,000, we didn't reduce our level of service or our number of members of the RCMP force. They weren't in our RCMP force, so that was a proposal. So there wasn't any budget reduction. If we can establish a $740,000 finding, then I think that we can find at least that number or double that number if we look hard enough, that may or may not impact levels of service. But I honestly believe that we're duty bound, with or without a core services review, with or without the results of a core services review, with or without the recommendations that come from a core services review, to make every effort before we get there to reduce our annual operating budget. And it's nice that we have a 1% increase, but it's not nice that we've increased by millions and millions in the last 3 years to 5 years. And from my perspective, in 4 years from now, and the Chamber made it pretty clear, in my opinion, that we need to, and this is the first time that I've heard a Chamber come and express those views to us as a council. And the 6 points that they raised, and I think people are paying far more attention to our increases. Not in percentages, because once you start getting to that $200 million range, 1% is a lot of money. 2%, moving into 2017 at 4% to 5%, is a lot of money in the millions. It sounds like it's not very much when we're feeling really, really good about the 1%. But I think we have to go deeper, and I will not be in a position to support first, second, or third reading this evening, because I would like us to go back and try to see if there's any places where we can establish. And I've been told before over my 3 terms, give us direction. And I've, over the 3 terms, tried to provide direction that bring back a budget that's 2% less than what it is today, with or without service cuts, and then put the onus on us to make those decisions. Because when we've tried to go the other way, when we say, reduce this, reduce that, take that out, move this, the 87 hours or whatever it was that we spent last year on department by department budget meetings, the end result was the same as where we are today. So therefore, people didn't want to go through that exercise again, because it rendered the exact same result. So I think this council, if we're going to make a statement and leave a legacy, that we have to roll up our sleeves. We have to get to work to bring back the lowest possible budget that we can that's acceptable while we're undertaking a core services review. Not before one comes forward. I think that they can be worked simultaneously. So, to my earlier point to the city manager, if it requires a different motion, please let me know, and I'll be happy to make that motion. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
I'm satisfied with the 1% increase to the budget. Actually, I'm not satisfied with the 1% increase. I think that we have cut too fine. I would much prefer to have the RCMP officers added on. I would much prefer to see us follow through on the fire protection plan. I would much prefer not to see the cuts that that council accepted. However, that was the decision of council, and I'm quite prepared to accept the decisions of council. That's the wisdom of council. The collective wisdom of council has said that we are going forward with the 1% increase. The collective wisdom of council also, not my plan, not an election promise of mine, let's do a core review. Let's bring in an external body, organization to review our budget and give us recommendations. Well, I said that would never have been something that I would have wanted to go ahead with. Council decided to do that. That's what we're going to do. Great, I'm 100% behind it. What I'm not 100% behind is saying I want a core review. I want an external opinion about how we spend our money. I want an external opinion about the level of services we have. But let's go ahead and make those decisions ourselves before we've even hired an external body. It doesn't make sense. If we're going to do a core review, then we need to do it properly. This ad hocery doesn't do us any good. We look the electorate square in the eye and say, we're going to use an external expert to come and tell us what services they think that Nanaimo should have and how expansive those services should be. So go ahead, let's do that. Let's stick by our guns and do that. 1% is money set aside to deal with the asset management issues that we have. Let's do that. Let's take the time, do a core review, do it right, and don't second guess the promise we made that we would bring in an external body to give us some help. That's what we should do. That's what we said we'd do, and that's what we should do. So I'm quite happy to pass first reading of this, also knowing that it can be changed. We've already established that tonight. This can be changed.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't support these readings on a couple of things, but mainly I don't actually have a problem with increasing our taxes to 1% if we've done the best that we could and come to the conclusion that this is the best that we could, and sorry guys, taxes are going to go up. But I don't feel that I've done the best that I could to account for, like hearing what the chamber is saying with their freezes. This is the first I've heard of it. None of this was brought to us while we're actually in deliberation with regards to the budget. So I would actually like to spend some time and talk to the chamber to see why they feel that a zero increase for the next 20 years, how that is going to help our business community. And as we know, small business is the driving force here for the city. So if that's what it's going to take to get Nanaimo and to draw businesses here, I think we're going to have a serious look at it, and I'm willing to take the time. So I know that the budget doesn't need to be completed right away. We've approved the things that need to get done. So now I would actually like to spend a little bit more time looking at the budget. to see if there's anything else that we can do until I'm satisfied. And if the 1% is where it's going to be, then so be it. But until then, I think I want to have some more look into the budget before I decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It goes back to my question earlier, and that is, as we've determined, that changes can be made to this budget and this bylaw should we pass it. And I'm hearing, yes, we want to look further at the budget. Nothing is going to prevent us or stop us from doing that. I'm also hearing that we want to get on with the budget process. And to me, passing first and second reading, at least of a bylaw, would do that, and at the same time still allow us time to re-examine things that are in the budget and come back with suggested changes or proposals at a future date within the next 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I have to agree with both Councillor Brennan and with Councillor Thorpe. I do believe that the core review is going to give us what we need in terms of moving forward. For us to start making all these decisions right now and all these cuts right now, when the very point of a core review is to find out where we should be making those cuts. Maybe we should do one or the other and not both. As for Councillor Thorpe's suggestion that passing this motion does not prohibit us from making more cuts to the budget if that's what we want to do, or examining the budget further. We can still continue to change the budget. Passing these motions tonight is not going to change that. And so I don't see any downside to passing this motion tonight, and I will be in favor of it. Thank you.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm a little perplexed. I never heard anywhere in our conversations that we were waffling or not going to do a core review, so maybe I'm mishearing things. But nevertheless, pardon me? No, actually, I'm not here mishearing things. Sorry. Is there a way, this will be for Mr. Swaby, where in the 2017, it says right there, we must do a property tax rates bylaw and 5-year financial plan. Is there a way we can do a 2-year plan? Like, I am stuck on 4.6 because if that's stuck, it's going to be hard to move that. And I was wondering if it's possible if we can do 2015, 2016 as this core review work takes place. It definitely better be complete by then. And then look at it, then we'll have a better figure on those numbers for 2017, 18, and 19. And if we can't do that, then why don't we just keep 2017 at a lower percent? And then if we have, and go from there. Just food for thought, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Well, thank you. Can staff, do you have access to some of the numbers now? I know last year when we talked about cuts, there was one item, for example, service and contracts, and there's another example in materials and supplies. And in last year, they added up to some $17.4 million. And so a 10% discount on that $17 million, trying to cut 10% out of $17 million, would bring us $1.7 million in cuts. So that would mean we might purchase 10% less or get a better deal, demand better pricing, and search out better pricing. Not being tied to one type of item would give us that flexibility to purchase. So service and contracts, material and supply, $17 million. Take 10% off that, $1.7 million. We're down to a zero budget. There's room. $200 million. 3 years ago, it was $160 million. And I think that's what the Chamber's getting at. It just keeps climbing. It just keeps climbing. And the businesses are having trouble. And it has to relate back to what they're being able to purchase, what they're getting. And to sit here and say, oh, we can make changes later. We'll make them later. Come on, we'll make them. No, we make them now. Give staff some time to do this. I can't support it right now because it's getting pushed out. We brought down 1%, took $700,000 off in a couple weeks, and then we're just going to push it out to 2017 or 2018 or 2019. All these things that we have never analyzed as our service values. We've never done a service value analysis, what I would consider a core services review. that hundreds of communities are doing across our nation right now. And we seem to be fighting it. It's the big thing. Oh, let's do the service review. Oh, let's show everybody what we're going to cut. We need a benchmark. We have so many line items. They just continue to grow. And we've done tons of work on social issues, building houses. We've done tons of stuff on environmental issues. But we haven't done tons of stuff on financial issues over the last years. A few years ago, we did the same thing. We tried to look down what we did environmentally, what we did socially. And where we were falling apart is when I first talked about core review a few years ago on asset management, I mean, it's 25% increase in 3 or 4 years from 160 million. It's just too much growth for me. The only thing growing that fast is my waistline. And I'm just, like I say, it's just hard for me to think, yeah, we're getting 1% this year, sounds real good, but it's going to bump up. It's going to bump up. Our water treatment plant coming online. Officers, I think for our budgeting, we're looking at 3 in RCMP, the contracts increased by 542,000. And services plus additional members, 3 2015 we turned down, then 4 in 16, 3 in 17, 5 in 2018, and 4 in 19. Firefighters or police support, a person in each of those. Firefighters, 10 on 2016 and 10 additional on 2017. It's growing and growing and growing. And it sounds nice when I say, oh, that's only $60 on a $350,000 house. And it doesn't include the core review $200,000. It's not some of the considerations. Property acquisition, culture and heritage, upgraded infrastructure projects like the Harewood Centennial Hall, and we got to be strong. Like I say, I understand supporting staff and supporting good jobs in our community, but there's a time when we have to take leadership roles, and I'd like to see a motion where we cut 2% more out of this. And if we go to to purchasing and buying things right now, I think we could we could tighten our belt. 1%, 2% more is where I'd like to see this go, and really, really hit it hard. Better to pain now than pain later. Thank you. I can't support the budget as it sits.
So, Your Worship, I just wanted to remind Council that this was not staff's initiative. Council asked staff to come back with a budget of 1%.
I wasn't at that meeting.
And Council then approved the budget at 1% and asked us to bring forward a bylaw to Council. And here we are. We're willing to give you any budget you want. The budget's always yours every year. 26 years I've been here. Council approves the budget, not staff. Whatever number you'd like, we'll bring it back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I just want to, for my knowledge, provide a level of clarity that if we do pass first, second, and third readings without providing direction to staff to come back with a lesser amount, then the horse is out of the barn. So we need, sure, we can make changes, but not without a motion. And no changes will be made if we don't direct staff to come back with less than. Are you okay? You're right?
I'm respecting you by listening to you.
Thank you. So if we don't provide that direction, then there won't be any attempt to come back with anything lower than what we have now. Sure, we can make changes, but staff won't make changes if we don't ask them to come back with a 0.5%. Or in this case, it's probably in the neighborhood of $400,000 plus or minus, or 1% more, which is $800,000 or $900,000. So without providing that direction, there won't be any changes made. So I think it's important that we say that. And yes, we're doing a core services review, and it's going to be external. And I would just then have to ask the question, are we going to accept all of the recommendations from the external core services review recommendations that come forward? Because when those come forward, I'm sure that we're going to have debate about our value systems of what we don't want to cut. So it's really easy to sit here and say, well, we're going to do an external core services review by an independent, and we'll wait to see what they tell us. Well, we will. And if we're willing to sit here and say, yeah, I'll accept all of the recommendations, then I don't want any more cuts. leave it the way it is, and I look forward to approving every one of their recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to get back to Councillor Pratt's thing, I don't think that I want to pass these motions just because we are constantly giving this information to the media, and everybody is, we started at 1.8%, now we're down to 1%. What's the next thing? I would like to do the first, second, and third reading, like Councillor Bestwick said, is if we've done everything that we can, and let's get this out there, because I don't want to come and not be able to give, a staff direction after the fact that we've made these decisions. 1% doesn't seem like a lot, but for the business community, it's 3 times that. So $60 for a person, so personal residence is, it's not the same. It's 3% higher.
I thought we had brought all the. I thought we had brought all the tax rates down to the same level. The residential, commercial, and industrial. And the issue I think that the Chamber has said is that our commercial is out of whack with other cities, but it is still the same here. We've equalized them.
Your Worship,
Am I wrong? That's how I understood it.
We brought down industrial to match up with commercial and left it, still it's the high rate.
It's 3 times higher than residential. I'd like that confirmed.
Well, Your Worship, the issue I think the Chamber has identified is that we have one of the higher commercial tax rates in the province.
Yeah.
We acknowledge that. And we've worked hard, Council's worked hard over the years to bring down the industrial rate, which is, I believe, equalized with the commercial. So in order to make change to the commercial, it's really the residential tax rate. If you maintained your current service level, your residential tax will have to go up.
So how much higher is the commercial tax than the residential tax here?
We'd have to look that up, Your Worship, and get back to you on the actual rate.
Okay.
If I recall, Mr. Clemens said it was, I always thought it was 3.17 times residential. It's actually, and I think we were corrected, it's about 2.65, if I'm correct. And if I recall, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business would like to see it at no more than 2, double.
Your Worship, it varies. It varies, and we'd have to do some analysis for you on how much we would have to adjust the residential and the industrial to make that 0 for the commercial.
Great, thank you. No other speakers?
I did. I was in line.
You were in line. Did you want to speak? Go ahead.
I do. I become frustrated, I think, when we have this discussion, because we have it all the time, and we get these open-ended questions. Why can't we reduce the purchasing budget by 10%? Why don't we just cut 2% from the budget? And we can. Any councillor here can say, I move that we reduce the purchasing budget by 10%. And if we are, if you get 5 votes, you can do that. And if you don't get 5 votes, you can't. And that's as simple as that. It's got nothing to do with our staff and everything to do with us and the way we decide to do this budget. I remember, yes, we did. We met time and time again last year in the day, because that was the preferred time for councillors to meet, was during the day. I know one councillor couldn't make it, and he was soundly criticized by council for not coming. So I'm at a loss to understand how these things happen and how they become part of the narrative of City Council. It's very simple. Make a motion to cut 10% from the purchasing budget if you think that we can do that. And test it and see if you have the support of your council. That's the same for any one of these. I guess the mayor asked at one point for the budget that was presented to us at 1.8, that 0.8, we get a budget back that reduced it by 0.8. that was done. And there was a lot of complaining about that, a lot of people voting against that. However, we did get a budget presented to us that was 1%. So, but there was no motion to say reduce that further. Reduce it by 10% in the purchasing. Reduce it by 2% overall. Nobody has done that, and it is the way it's done. It's the only way to do it. It isn't our staff coming back to us and saying that can't be done. You give direction to staff to bring back a budget that's 2% less than what they've given us, they'll do that. And otherwise, we are spinning our wheels and not making any progress either forward or back. We just spin our wheels. And so, let's pass this, let's give the readings to this, and everybody can then go away and think up ways to cut the budget before the core review, and then spend the money on the core review, and then look at things. And there is absolutely no sort of incremental steps on this budget. There's a lot of complaining, but there is no incremental steps on how are we going to do this. Let's work together. Let's try 0.8. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Let's try another 0.3. That's how you do it. That's how you work as a team. Let's do that. But to sit back and throw your hands up and say, I'd like to cut 10% off of this piece of the budget, but never say I move that. Never test it amongst your colleagues. Just spins your wheels. Like, let's do this then.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Well, it's really funny to hear that because I view it differently. I don't just run in and plop a motion all the time. I try and give people heads up. And to me, it's not just about motions. It's about debating and educating each other, trying to find common ground, not just jamming my motions through. This is a different view I have of it. I'd rather talk and have people pick a piece of it and grow with it and understand it. So when you bring up a new topic, sustainability, environment, and you bring those forward, I'm not the type to just bang it. I want to bring collaboration and discuss issues and try and shift through them. So, yeah, I understand, I want a motion for this, I want a motion for that, and I want my name recorded for it. No, I'm not that way. I debate and educate, try and bring things forward. I have the sheets from when you say we go around in circles, because we don't get the motions passed. I have my list from last year of what we talked about, and the service and contract stuff was in there, and the reducing of NEDC budgets, eliminating car allowances, revisiting aquatic themes of $1 million. And we made motions, and they didn't pass. So then you go back, you try and re-educate, try and rediscuss. And I don't play a 5-4 game. I'm just not that way. Oh, yeah, I won 5-4. No, I try and bring the city along to new ideas. So we disagree with how we do things. And I accept how you want to make motions, and I hope you would accept how I do my things and how I plant seeds, because it's just the type of guy I am. So, I'd like to make a motion now. Then we cut the budget by 2%. Is there a motion on the floor?
There's a motion on the floor.
That's the first one to come. Okay, so I can't make my motion.
Sure you can.
Later.
Yep. Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I really don't want to say too much more other than the fact that sometimes through the opportunities that we have provided to us in our various budget sessions or otherwise, but I do take offense to the notion that motions haven't been made or haven't attempted or haven't tried. I think I submitted 17 motions in writing last year during our budget deliberations that were all rejected. 17, not 1, 17. And I think the year previous, I asked for a percentage reduction, and it was defeated. So, and every year, the season starts with no wins and no losses, and no ties and no points on the board, and you go back again. And you say, okay, and that's, so here we are, saying, I'm back here saying, okay, that's good, we're doing okay, but I'd like to do better. I would like us to reduce our budget a little bit more. regardless of whether or not we have this core services review happening or not. We've never done one. So in 60 years, whatever it's going to cost us, it's probably well worth the legacy that we're going to leave to future generations of people that are going to follow behind us. So for me, whatever happens in these readings, I'll be happy to make, and I said it earlier, I think I said it 30 minutes ago and about 20 minutes ago, if it requires a motion, which it does, I couldn't agree more, I'll be happy to make it.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm listening to the debate with interest, and I think I'm hearing good points made by various speakers. I still personally feel that I would like to move ahead with this bylaw and then have us as councillors go back, look at our budget information, which we've already had lots of time to do, but we have more time in which to do it. Give some thought if we wish to come forward with future motions, whether they be to take things out of the budget or possibly to add things back into the budget. And I'm thinking of the RCMP officers. I know that the meeting that I recall, we had an original budget of 1.8% increase. We as a council asked staff to come back with a budget of 1.0% increase, which they did. They followed council's direction, and I'm quite prepared to pass a bylaw at this point with what they've brought us. Again, subject to the fact that if people feel strongly that they can identify areas that they wish added to or subtracted from the budget, we're free to make those motions as we go forward. But I think we've got to do something tonight to start this process happening, or we'll never get our budget passed for 2015. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, clear the queue. No further speakers. I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Hong, Yocum, Bestwick, and Kipp opposed. All right, so now at this point the motion fails. So we now need a new motion. We need to give instruction to staff. Councillor Kipp.
I'd make a motion that we send back to staff to ask for a 2% reduction on the existing budget.
So can we get clarity on that? 2% on the original proposed budget or the budget that we see here today?
As we see it today.
Okay, so further 2%.
And if I can speak to it. I know we're going to do the core review talk and management and organizational structures over this period of time. We have talked about positions and hirings and firings. I know we supply all the time to BC bid and different things and projects and that. I believe we can send it to staff, and they said they'll do what we want as a council. They'll come back with what we want. And if we give them a 2%, it'll be tough work. But I quite honestly believe that if we can take that magic number of our tax requisition and cut 2% off of it, because my other concern now with our budgets too with this is that because of the size of growth, we're also using quite a few reserve funds. I think it's 15% of this year's budget is from reserves. I think our in is 160-something million, and reserves are up there. I think that's why I'm like I say it's sometimes hard for me to understand all the information. So I believe if we send back to staff, we'll get over this thing of no motions, and staff understands we want this stuff done. We have our things that we want to accomplish, and staff will get to seeing where they can reduce the budget. And the CAO will work hard for it, and the staff will work hard and to look at where they can reduce the 2%. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just if I understand the motion, I tried to write it, to direct the city manager to return to council budget options that reflect a further 2% decrease?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we're actually into 2% less, we'd be minus 1% then. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then I wouldn't need to make a motion to support what the chamber is saying with 0% increase. Am I correct? Because we're going to actually go less than what they're asking. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Swaby, did you want to add something?
Your Worship, thank you. Some direction would also assist staff. The two areas that we'll look at for reducing the budget will be in projects, which are generally renewal, and for service levels. As I noted in the report and at the last council meeting, it's my professional opinion that we're now into service cuts to actually make the budget go lower than the 1%. So I'll bring back a bunch of options for council for reducing service levels, but there will be implications, of course, for the community. And I just want to know if council has a preference between, or if you wanted me not to touch service levels, then it would all be projects, which are renewals, not just defers it from future years. So that kind of direction would help me.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Brennan.
So I just want to understand this. So a 2% reduction would be, would the mover be expecting that 1% of the final budget would be for asset management? So this would be 2% off the services that we deliver now.
Can I respond to that?
That's what I'm asking.
Actually, the asset management has been a great concern for me. I actually think we're not putting enough aside in asset management, and that's one of my concerns with us continuing to grow our budget or pick up a few services or add some things or just continue that 2%, 2%, 2% growth, is my concerns is our failing infrastructure. Our report on that had that we are more than 1% behind, but without everything all failing at once, a slow increase, that 5% over the 1% and the 1% and the 1% over the 5 years would give us an increase. In fact, I wouldn't want to cut any money from asset management. I want to maintain our water and our roads and some of the things that we have. And I think by growing a number of other line items now and the continual downloading from federal and provincial governments, that we have to tighten up what we do, what we accept, what we take on, and that we have to maintain the equipment in the ground that we have. And for me, it's expensive. I mean, yeah, it'd be great to add police officers and it'd be great to add firefighters, but if we got no water in the ground or it's dirty water and our sewer pipes are breaking, those firefighters aren't going to help us that much. Those police officers aren't going to help us that much when our buildings are falling down, when the water lines are getting dirt in them, our turbidity levels are high. So yeah, I'm all for keeping as much percentage of asset management on our $2 billion worth of assets that we don't have $2 billion worth of saved up to spend over 60 years. So I want to try to reduce the budget on our spending to protect what we have in the ground and what we have as a community. Sort of the quality of life things that we've got to this far.
So then in answer to the question that I posed, there would be 2% reduced from the budget to deliver services. Yes, okay. I can't support that.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just to our city manager, no limits and not restricted to certain departments. Do I wish to see the 1% that we did 2 years ago, we're into year 3, I think, remain? Yes. 1% on our compounding, on our annual operating budget, that how we factor that number. If we can reduce our budget a little bit, we might have more to invest in building infrastructures, because we don't have significant building infrastructure reserves at this point. So no limits. So whether that's capital projects or annual operating or department by department by department, if we can find some savings in our operations, great. Just find the savings, bring back to us where the savings are found or established, and then we can decide whether or not it's too much or not enough, or however that plays out. But if we don't have the whole windshield of information in front of us, just a little piece of the dashboard, then I think that we won't be able to make the best decision. So leave it wide open. Take whatever you need.
Mr. Swaby.
So I just wanted to clarify that asset management, although we put 1% of new money in per year, most of the projects that we do per year, capital projects, are actually asset management. So we're putting far more back in just in the capital program as well. So I didn't want to leave the community thinking it's just the 1%. But $2 million out of the budget from here, I don't want to underestimate the challenge council is going to have making the choice in terms of the service levels that I'm going to bring back, that I think you'll have to make to reduce the budget by $2 million. That's a lot of dollars for a budget that I already know is at a bare minimum, unless you reduce services.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. So, now can we get down to business here? Can we get something that we can actually start to agree on here? Or are we going to just do this around chasing our tail all night long? We've got to give staff some instruction here. Do we have any motions going to be coming forward? Councillor Brennan.
I would move that we refer this item to the next meeting of council.
Second.
And how do you? Okay, so you're going to put that motion on the table?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to address that. Councillor Hong first.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to throw out there, like, the 2% that Councillor Kipp suggested doesn't mean that I'm going to cut $2 million of essential services. I would actually just like to see an option. Like, I don't even want to put a number out there. I just actually want the city manager to give us whatever he thinks we can cut and let us decide. I don't really care what the number is. Maybe it is 1. There's nothing else that we can do. But not having enough options on here, it makes my job really hard to decide on where the budget is when I don't see enough. And I think it should be our job to decide what we need to cut as a group. And it should be the city manager's job just to lay everything out to her and saying that this is, you can do this, but here's the consequence. And it should be our job to deliberate that. So I don't even care what that number is. I just want to see a bigger list is what I would like to get to. So I'm not even expecting a number. Thank you.
Mr. Swaby.
So, Your Worship, Councillor Hong may have heard Councillor Bestwick and Kipp talk about the motions that they suggested last term and how they were defeated. Council's decision-making is a bunch of value systems. So when it comes to whether you think that we should reduce the ice surfaces by a certain percentage of time, or the pool, or stop repairing the roads for potholes, or reduce fire services, or don't do cat neutering, or any number of services, it's all based on everyone's value system, and it's very hard to get consensus. The budget is a very complex and large document with which Council's been through, and all of it is there for you. And we looked for your direction for what you believe you should take out or reduce. It's not staff's job to provide you with the service cuts unless you would like some service cuts, and then we'll provide you with some options. But unless we understand council collectively of what you would like to cut, then we're just back to the same problem where you may want to cut one thing, Councillor Brennan may want to cut something else. It's very difficult unless there's motions about what areas of the budget you would like to see reduced or increased. And Your Worship, that's really why I would implore you that the core services review, although I didn't think it was all about reducing the budget with a core services review based on what I had heard from council, is clearly an area where you would spend all of your time looking at every service that we deliver and determine whether not only is it an appropriate service, is the level of the service where you'd like it. Some cases you may want to reduce it, some cases you may want to increase it. Some services, as we've seen recently, you've added to the budget, even this term. In fact, that's usually what tends to happen, is every year we add services because the community demands more services and council agrees to it. It's very difficult to cut services, and the core review will be a very interesting process for this council to undertake, because it will provide you with all of the information that you're looking for, Councillor Hong, in terms of what we deliver and how much it costs for each service.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I appreciate it's a tough business. You're running a $200 million business. and I appreciate the fact the CEO works hard on it. Our business continuity plan during massive disaster. We do have a business continuity plan in place for business operations, do we not?
Your Worship, I believe Councillor Kipp knows this answer, but we spent a lot of money on the SARC building to provide for business continuity because it's a post-disaster building. So that's the biggest step in terms of how we will have business continuity. In terms of clearing debris and all of that sort, we have a plan with Public Works and how we would do all that.
Well, no, business continuity has 3 stages. So there'd be chaotic operations. So what are we trying to do in the first stage of business continuity? So that gives you your basic things that you need to supply to people, your water, your garbage removal, or whatever it is, however the corporation has determined the basic needs of the community. Then we go into another level of operations that is now starting to expand. So you're in chaos, then you're in basic operations. Yeah.
Is there a motion on the floor that we are discussing? Is there a framework for this discussion?
Well, I think other people were talking, so I just joined in the conversation. I'm sorry if it's, what I'm trying to say is...
I really think that we need to have something that we're discussing. Otherwise, everybody talks about all sorts of different things, and there's no cohesion. And I look to the mayor...
Could he judge on it's a referral, and he should judge on
Well, there was no seconder, I think, to my motion to refer, so... Did you? Okay, so it's a motion to refer. So if... Your Worship, if we could maintain some reference to the actual motion.
We've got a motion to refer back to staff. My problem is that we haven't given staff any direction. Refer it back to staff. Okay, what are they going to do with it?
So, Your Worship, I understand the motion is to refer the matter to the next council meeting, which will be March the 2nd.
Right, and it still does not give any, speaking to the motion, it does not give staff any direction. It just stops the process.
Well, I think we need to stop tonight because we're not getting anywhere, and I think we need to take a break and come back in, 2 weeks, I guess, is the next council meeting. Having had some time to think about it, to ask questions about it, to go through our budget binders and come prepared to deal with the question. But there is no we can't just keep throwing out a number. Tonight it's time to stop and come back and talk about this with a fresh mind.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. I don't disagree, and I'm wondering if this isn't a FP Cal topic. I'm wondering if this isn't a finance policy committee of the whole topic, discussion, debate, analysis with our binders on our desks and in a more informal environment where we do budget stuff.
Okay, so you wanted to refer to the next council meeting?
Refer this bylaw to the next council meeting, and if Councillor Bestwick wants it on the next Cal meeting to have a discussion about, well, that's probably a good idea. We can come prepared then to the council meeting in 2 weeks, prepared to look at the bylaw. But you can't pass a bylaw at a committee meeting, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so thank you. So I'm not thinking about passing a bylaw. I realize that we do it here in the regular meeting of council, but the Financial Policy Committee of the whole meetings is where we have an opportunity to have the discussion about certain budget items, about budgets, about departments, and that's when we've spoken previously about getting those meetings, and I think the city manager said getting those meetings back to what they were originally intended for and what their purpose is, and that's what those meetings were originally intended to do, and that's what their purpose was. So I'm just suggesting that we take this topic of our financial plan 2015 to 19 to our FP Cal meeting to have this discussion. Hopefully we can come out of that meeting with some consensus, and then we'll come back the next week and pass 3 readings of our 2015-19 financial plan instead of getting here on Monday night at 7 o'clock and doing this all over again. So I think it gives us a couple of kicks at the cat in order to ensure that we get the opportunity. to be prepared for the Monday night meeting when we're going to endorse or not.
So a motion to refer the bylaw to next council meeting is on the table. It's been seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, next question. Am I hearing that we want to take financial plan review to an upcoming COW meeting?
That's what I'm suggesting, so that we can take it there. We can't pass readings there. I get it. We can discuss it, and then hopefully the next Monday we will.
So, Your Worship, just to clarify too, the COW meetings are held here. So if Councillor Bestwick was wanting them to be back in the boardroom, like the financial planning sessions, where I'd like that direction.
No, we can do it here. It's just the tone of the meeting. It's just the meeting itself that we know that we're coming with our binders open, sitting here to have those discussions. A white board if we need one, a chalkboard if we need one, a Ouija board if we need one, and we can do that. We can do that right here because that's what those things are about. If we want to put a rectangular table right out here and we all sit around it like we used to, then great. But so I'm quite comfortable to sit here in this environment and do it at the FP next Monday and come to some sort of understanding of what we'll be bringing forward at the next meeting.
So,
and that's a motion if you want to, if Mr. Jackson can capture that in a motion somehow.
Okay, so the motion that's on the floor is that we take, is that we bring financial discussion back pertaining to the budget to our next committee of the whole meeting to be held here.
Yes, Your Worship, which would be February 23rd, next Monday.
February 23rd. Okay. And are there other items on the docket that night, I would suspect, or is that going to be the only item that we're going to discuss that night?
It'd be, well, this would be a major one. I don't know, I'd have to talk to the city manager about what would be deferred.
Your Worship, we have regular stuff that's ready to come forward. If council would like a motion just to have this as the only item, that's fine. We will accommodate you.
The pleasure of the mover.
Bring the agenda as original, as how you would prepare it.
As a normal COW meeting. Okay, very good. Thank you. So, there's a motion on the floor. Has it been seconded, Mr. Jackson? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. No one opposed? Carried. Perfect. Next item. Meetings and agenda circulation times. Request for direction. Provide information to council discussion and obtain direction on proceeding with amendments to council procedure bylaw 2007 number 7060 in regards to increasing the time between regular meeting agenda publication and the meeting day. So there are two items here with requests for direction. They will require moving to get on the floor. So moved. Do we have a seconder? Second. Councillor Bestwick, second.
So, Your Worship, you said there are two items well, the first item is, there's three parts to it, A, B, and C. And then the second item has an either or.
Alternate, that's correct.
So if Your Worship please, is maybe just the first item?
We'll do item number one.
Thank you.
First off. Any speakers to that? Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. I'm just not sure of the intent of all of these, and where an appropriate question would be. But my question is, on a Tuesday following a statutory holiday, does that change? Does that change anything, or does in how staff's time to present or prepare? That's my question, and I don't know where the right place is to ask that question.
Sure. Well, with the meeting itself, obviously would be canceled, but in terms of preparing for the next one, there are 2 days where we have a city manager briefing on, typically it's, I believe, the Monday, and the same day I was suggesting the mayor's meeting briefing. So when there's a stat on that day, then I'm suggesting we'd meet with the city manager on the Friday, and then with the mayor Tuesday morning.
And that'll still allow enough time to get the agendas out for noon, obviously.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. but it's, we are hopefully going to succeed.
So that's the goal. So would it be appropriate to put a trial period on that? Go over, for the balance of 2015 or will you just come back and say, you know what, we can't achieve this level of service after stat holidays, so we have to go back now and revisit that? Or, so I'm only trying to find a place where we might put a trial basis on, we come back in 8 months and you go, you know what, it's working. Or you know what, we probably should make it Wednesday preceding the Monday meeting after a stat holiday, because Tuesdays is just pushing it too hard. I'm only trying to find something that's going to...
Thank you, Worship. On that, I think it's a great idea to keep checking in to see how it's going. The one issue, though, is that it is a bylaw. So once you amend the bylaw, then it's a question of putting it in our brain so it's a bring forward in the next 9 months, because it's set. So we can't write in the bylaw that this is a pilot. We would have to be formalized, the bylaw's done, and then we just would revisit it in 9 months to consider another amendment. That's the method. Yeah.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have preferred the Thursday one that we have discussed, but this one could work. Just a couple of suggestions, like Councillor Bestwick said, agendas are to be published by 12 p.m. on Wednesday, I think would be fine for me, under the same reason why I would have to agree that if there was a stat holiday on the Monday, and then staff were to come back on a Tuesday to be doing the work, it just seems to be a little bit extra. And then just a question about the amended agendas are to be published by 4 o'clock on Friday. What happens if it's a Friday is a stat, like Good Friday is? There just doesn't say anything on here. I don't want staff to be doing overtime to do an agenda item for a Friday. So just a question.
I can take a track at that one. So in terms of the Tuesday, I'd suggest to Council to consider locking that one in, and that's just because one of the purposes is to maximize the amount of time between the agenda publication, late end items, and delegations. So if you move it to the Wednesday, it may compromise the values that you're trying to achieve there. So we will meet the Tuesday. We can do that. We can guarantee that at staff. If that's what you want, we will achieve that. On the Friday, though, you're right. And I think when we go to look at the bylaw, if I get direction to actually prepare an amendment, that's the kind of formula I'd build in, is if there's a stat on this day, then this would happen. So I'd be bringing something back that has that. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm assuming that the week leading up to the statutory Monday will be a less heavy week, given that there's no council meeting on the Monday. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That you would not be spending that week preparing for the Monday, so that it doesn't really complicate things or make staff workload heavier, because there is no meeting on Monday, so the staff the week before would not be preparing for it. They could be preparing for the Monday, hence. So.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
That was my point exactly, that if there is no meeting on the Monday because of a stat, clearly you'd be already planning for the following week. So getting that out on a Tuesday shouldn't be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. No further, seeing there's no further speakers, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp opposed. Balance of council in favor. Motion carries. The next item is looking for direction. There are two alternatives. One is that council directs staff to prepare late amended agendas such that A, only a listing of changes and associated reports are provided through an addendum, or B, continue with the current practice of preparing an amended agenda whereby changes are incorporated into the agenda and published as complete agenda cover pages, including the new associated documents. Do we have a mover? I'll move it. Okay. Seconder?
Sir, which is being moved?
Oh, which one? Pardon me.
A or B?
A or B?
Okay. So A would be similar to the RDN, and then B would be the current practice here. That's just a point of clarity.
Correct. Councillor Pratt. Oh, pardon me. So you're moving A. We need a seconder. Second. Councillor Kipp seconds. Okay, Councillor Pratt.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Councillor Kipp.
Yes, I support this because when I received this today, and I think I got my amended agenda at 11:29 this morning. It was sent out, something like that today?
That's right. So the deadline for delegations is 11, and then we publish it shortly after.
But I mean, there are changes in it, but I'm not always certain what the changes are. So I appreciate the fact that I would keep a consistent agenda with my notes on it and get the addendum. So I support this as it is. Item A.
Seeing no further speakers, I call the question on A. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Brennan and Mayor McKay opposed. Motion carries on A. Number 3, motion that council direct staff to provide direction regarding the live broadcasting of the Committee of the Whole meetings on Shaw Cable. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hong, seconder? Councillor Yoakum. Discussion. Councillor Vestwick.
Could I ask what this means?
Your Worship, we're looking for direction whether council, so an appropriate motion would be that we do broadcast or we don't broadcast.
The FP cows. So currently we're broadcasting FP cows live streaming on our website, correct?
Yes, we are.
So the question that you're asking for direction on is whether or not we would broadcast those 4:30 meetings live on Shaw? Is that the direction that you're?
That's correct.
So, thank you. So my direction would be to ask Shaw. Well, firstly, I don't think that we need to broadcast those on Shaw. We're already broadcasting them live streaming. I would direct staff to discuss with Shaw in their next round of programming the opportunity to revisit Thursday council meetings broadcast live, as this one is, on Thursdays. So I'd ask that question because I'm certain that they probably revisit their programming schedule on a semi-annual or seasonal basis. And I would like to ask the question whether or not, if we said, well, in 2016, we'd like to go to Thursdays, if that fits with their programming.
So perhaps you'd like to bring that up as a motion after this has been dealt with?
I don't even, yeah, I'll make that motion when the time comes.
Okay, thank you.
If now isn't the time.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Does this cost us extra money?
No, Shaw Cable does not charge for the live broadcasting at this time. Who knows?
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe. Any further questions? No. Okay. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. To me, this seems premature. We're talking about live broadcasts of the Council of the Whole, or Committee of the Whole meetings. It seems to me we need first to have a discussion about when those meetings are held, where they're held, what the intent of those meetings is. And I'm not prepared at this point to make a decision about broadcasting them until I'm more comfortable about the feelings of this council about the intent of those meetings, whether they're more formal, whether they're more informal, whether they're held around a board table. I think we need to have that discussion first. I would prefer to see this, if it's a motion or a recommendation, postponed till a future date when we have that those other issues settled.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Well, Councillor Thorpe is stealing my thunder again, so I really don't have anything more to say than what he said. That's exactly my point, is that we really haven't decided yet. We know that we are looking at these to change them back to what they were intended to be, and I'm not even sure if we're totally clear on what we're doing there, so this is premature.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you, Worship. Second is motion, I'll be crystal clear, is presently I'm comfortable with today's process of recording committee of the whole. I am out of it. We'd like us to keep it on on whatever evening, but 4:30 on, not these afternoon sessions. And also, but more importantly, inclined to making sure that the live meeting, the regular council meeting is recorded live by Shaw or whomever, but as long as it's recorded live. I hope that made sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Well, the live broadcast to me was never a thing of transparency. You can watch it at home, you have no interaction, it just shows what it is. So currently, our committee of the whole, and it's not a finance policy meeting anymore, am I correct, Mr. Swaby? It was changed years ago to discuss finance issues and policy issues. And then that was taken away, I believe, and the finance and policy issues went back to council, because that's where they were supposed to be dealt with. So this committee of the whole is really a nebulous little thing out there running, because we don't do policy stuff, we don't move bylaws forward. So it has morphed a few times in my humble existence here. And like when I hear, oh, we got to have our live broadcast on Monday for transparency, but now we don't need that same transparency when we're moving the business of council forward. My example would be the meeting where we did the 1.8% was a Wednesday morning meeting that wasn't publicized, it wasn't broadcast, it wasn't even recorded. So that lacked transparency in my mind. To say just Shaw, and Shaw does not include TELUS, so we're spending money for our Shaw people. And remember, we gave Shaw the right to broadcast or have all the wireless in town for a reasonable price, and it doesn't meet many satellites. So this, to me, is like, I don't know where this came from. Was it directed by us to look at this?
No.
It was just a staff recommendation?
No. Mr. Jackson.
Mea culpa. I guess it was in conversation with Shaw Cable where I asked, well, these committee of the wholes aren't broadcast. Is there a reason? Is what's with that? And I was advised that, well, that is a possibility if council wanted to proceed with that. So I thought I'd bring it back to council for that discussion. And if council would like, I appreciate what Councillor Beswick mentioned about reviewing the procedure bylaw in perhaps a year to see where we are. That's also the possibility, is to take a look at this if council does want to proceed with it at this time.
Your Worship, as it currently stands, there's no changes proposed to the committee of the whole. They're 4:30 on the alternate Monday, unless council directs staff to provide a report on alternatives for that meeting's location, for its telecast, and all that sort of thing. So if there's no direction tonight, it remains status quo.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, I call the question.
Could I have
I would like to.
The council directs staff.
It's actually, it's on the floor. Sorry, your motion, Councillor Beswick?
Didn't I make it?
No, this was Councillor Hong and seconded Councillor Yocum.
I was wanting to make it, I guess. Sorry.
The motion on the floor is that council directs staff to proceed with investigating the live broadcasting of committee of the whole meetings on Shaw Cable. Would you like me to repeat that? Or?
No direction.
Nope. Okay.
Ted's going to do what he has to do, so I don't need to make that motion.
Well, the motion's there, we have to.
There's a motion on the floor.
We can defeat it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimously opposed. Motion's defeated. Legislation related to council meeting minutes. To provide council with information regarding the procedures that local governments must follow related to the taking and maintaining of accurate minutes of council and committee meetings. We have a delegation, Mr. Fred Taylor. Welcome, Mr. Taylor.
Mayor McKay and council members, yes, there is no legislation or demand to keep agendas. Today's bylaw 7150, adopted June the 25th, 2012, refers to a records management manual. This manual is not law. It was created by an association. Bylaw 2150 repealed Bylaw 3722, adopted June the 25th, 1990. So, and that was the attachment to our own bylaw, not a records management association. For 22 years, agendas of council were kept for only 7 years, as stated in here. We now have destroyed history for considerable time by following an association, not law. Today's report to council states agendas have been kept since 2004. When will the association direction change? And if anybody wants anything before that, what the city has destroyed off their website, I have a copy of agendas going back further. There it is. This is when you started, 2001, on the website. And I used to compile these by the year, and the city clerk would make it available to council members so they could research back. Keep in mind today's report, the city's management system does not have a retention period for agendas. That's in your staff report. Well, you're supposed to be following the records management thing here, and here's item 0554 says agendas are permanent. So why are we not following the records agenda that you say you adopted? And this says the city's management system does not have a retention period. The records management does. So everything's mixed up. To protect history, one should obey the law. For historical value and the law, the minutes is the package to add any, in fact, all supplemental items. Why are we wasting the time adding it to the agenda when it's only a draft and is not by law demand to keep? The employer needs to direct the employee to recognize the law, the official package as the minutes, the corporate officer to amend the records management manual. Thank you.
Any questions for the delegation? No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So, staff recommendation on page 29, that council receive for information the report pertaining to the legislation relating to council meeting minutes. Do we have a mover?
Move the report.
Move the report. Seconder? Councillor Hong? Councillor Kep.
Thank you. Through to staff. Is that true, that we have an expiry date, or we don't have an expiry date?
The current Local Government Management Association manual says that actually agendas aren't one of those documents that should be retained. Having said that, we do have our agendas at the city retained going back to 1991. And the practice that I have in the department right now is that we will not be destroying any agenda packages. And what I'd like to see is the records management bylaw, which is on the long list of things to do, be referred back to, be reviewed and come back to council, so that becomes a permanent record. That's where because I think agendas have evolved to a point where they have much more importance and historical significance than perhaps they were in the 30s, the 40s, or 50s, because we do have the minutes going back to 1875. But to incorporate a lot of those documents into the minutes really changes what kind of minutes council has. And right now they're just business minutes, i.e. when it starts, when it ends, the resolutions that were passed, and all correspondence would be attached to the agenda package. But as Mr. Taylor says, if that agenda package is destroyed, well, then all that is lost. And that's true. And I see it going forward as it should be an item that also gets kept permanently and also posted to the website.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. So is a motion necessary or not necessary to ensure that retention of agendas are stored or not? We don't need...
Well, it's council's pleasure. The practice right now is they will not be destroyed. And
stored, sorry, not destroyed, stored.
Stored, they are stored on the server, etc. And that'll be the practice without council resolution. However, for certainty, if you wanted to pass a resolution, it's proper to do so. And at some point in the future, when the records management bylaw is amended, then it would be incorporated into that. So to answer your question, the practice does not need a resolution by council. However, if you wish to have that certainty, you may do so.
Well, if we're doing it anyway, and I think we just approved about a month ago a new storage capacity system to store items such as this, then I would suggest that a motion be appropriate, and I would make that motion that we, moving forward, store agendas and other related information for eternity, or whatever the proper phraseology is.
I can repeat that back. Sorry, there is a motion on the floor.
Correct.
Councillor, but I can repeat that back after this one's considered.
Councillor Pratt.
So I'm given to understand then, this is a question to the staff, that we do have the last 24 years from 1991, we have the last 24 years of agendas.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so seeing no further speakers, I call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Bestwick, did you want to bring a motion forward now?
That we store agendas and related items to agendas moving forward.
Second.
Can you read back the motion, please?
As I understand the motion is that direct staff, that agenda packages and associated documents be retained in perpetuity. Is that the wording that you said? That's what I thought. Okay, thanks. Your words, my mouth. Yeah.
Exactly what I said.
Oh my God, all those big words. All right. So, do we have a seconder for that motion? Second, Councillor Kipp. Okay. Councillor Kipp wishes to speak to it.
Yeah. What about is our mediums for storage now? Security, off-site storage. What are we doing for that? Because that's going to amount to a lot of documentation over time, and I'm always concerned with digital storage and the mediums that we store on now. How safe do we think it is, and how easy will that be to manage the database?
It's a good point, and unfortunately, Director Guerrero Ferrero is not here. He would talk about the security measures around the digital, but in terms of the physical copies, we do have it in the vault. We have vaults in City Hall and also in parkades, and they're fireproof, and they're also there's moisture, and there's all sorts of document management, properly document management storage. Integrity, so it's maintained. I can't comment on the server. However, I've been advised that there's backups to backups to backups.
So, Your Worship, in terms of everything will eventually be digital for sure, and as you recall, you just approved a budget increase of 250 or 275 to increase our storage capacities. It's an expensive and growing part of the organization.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item. Number 1, Port Drive, detailed site investigation results summary. Presentation by Mr. Corson, Manager of Real Estate. Mr. Corson.
Great, thank you, Worship. With me tonight is Mr. Martin Jarman, thank you, of EBA. Martin was a senior consultant who assisted with this project, and Martin's here to answer any of your technical questions. So tonight what I'd like to do is share the results of the work that came out of the study and give you a little bit of background on the property, talk about why we were doing the work, I'll give you a summary of the results, and then talk about the work that's planned for this year. So for some of the newer councillors, this is the property that we purchased from CP Rail in 2013. We paid $3.4 million for it. It's 26.7 acres in size. The upland area is about 20 acres. The water lot is about the remaining 6.7. When we bought the property, we did a series of due diligence reports. We looked at the condition of the existing trestle. We did some geotechnical work. We looked at the existing right-of-ways and leases, and we also reviewed the existing environmental reports for the property. And at that time, when we reviewed the environmental reports, the worst-case scenario for contamination on the site was the cleanup costs were between $10 and $30 million. But the recommendation was that rather than actually dig the contamination out, you would follow a risk management approach. And that's what all these studies are part of. So I just want to give you a little history on the property and how it came to be. It's reclaimed land, so you can see it in the red outline there. So that was 1854. Just a little bit of the shoreline existed at that time. In 1862, it still hasn't changed too much. And then in 1891 was kind of an important period. That was when the Vancouver Coal Mine and Land Company established its operations. And you can see that there's some docks set up there. So between 1891 and 1944, the property really starts to take shape. There was a lot of reclamation from the coal mining works being pushed into the ocean. Gravel was deposited, silt was deposited on site. In 1953, the land was sold to CP, and they established the Wilcox Rail Yard. And then by 1977, the property pretty much resembles where it is today. So with that in mind, we know there's a lot of fill and there's a lot of coal waste that's been placed there. So the reason we did the study was we wanted to know where is the contamination on the site, how much is there, and how do you actually remediate it using this risk approach. And we need to do that so that we can get approvals from the Ministry of Environment to do future development on the property or to subdivide. So last year we went through a request for qualifications process. We had 11 different firms respond. The work was awarded to Tetra Tech EBA, Martin's firm. And we asked them to do a stage 1 preliminary site investigation report. You're going to see lots of acronyms tonight. And a detailed site investigation report. The budget for the work was $230,000. We were able to leverage a grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund for $115,000 of that work. So in the stage 1 report, which is the first piece of work they looked at the work that had been done on the site before. There had been some drilling work done by SNC in 2009, and they also looked at historical records to see where buildings had been and activities had taken place. And by doing that, they are able to identify areas where they know there's contamination and areas that have potential for contamination. And so on this map, you can see these were the areas that we had to do some further investigation on. So that's what led to the detailed site investigation. And in those areas that were identified through the first report, they looked at soil samples, groundwater, vapor. There was 36 boreholes were dug, new ones, a test pit, and they also built on the work that had been done in 2009. All the data that came out was reviewed against the Ministry of Environment contaminated site regulations versus the industrial and commercial standards, which are a little bit lower than residential, because we know the site won't work for ground-based residential. It'll work for commercial industrial development with residential above. All the data was put through what's called a screen level risk assessment to see what the risks are and how you can actually move forward with development. So there's actually four areas on the upland that have contamination and the water lot. So this was the first area of concern, and it's the area kind of between the GAD Marine Building and the dock, and there's chromium, which exceeds the standards, and that's from the coal waste. But when you run it through the screen level risk assessment, it can actually remain in place, so that it doesn't have to be removed. The second area was between the Southern Rail Building and the wooden trestle. So there's the purple is hydrocarbons. They used to fill the trains, locomotives, and then the red is a chromium exceedance. Again, these don't need to be removed under the using this screening level risk assessment approach. This is the area of property that has probably the largest concern, and it's the panhandle between the Port Authority and the CP Rail property. So this is the road at this point in time. So the top 3A and 3C are, not a chemist, hang on, are chlorinated phenols. And 3B in the middle is a site that has chlorinated phenols and petroleum. The middle one actually has contamination flowing through the site. It goes between the NPA property and the CP property. But because it's under the road, it's at the moment doesn't pose any threats, but in the future we'd have to look at that. This is the fourth area they identified, which was zinc and cadmium from the former machine shop. Again, that can remain in place if it's capped with 1 meter of fill or if it's asphalted. And then the water lot's the big unknown. So they did a lot of sediment sampling in here, and there's a hot spot in the property. So to understand this property more, we need to go forward with a detailed risk assessment where they're going to do a lot more sediment sampling and come up with a remediation plan for this property. So at the end of the day, these are the areas that have contamination on the property. And it equals about 2.83 acres of land on the upland, and then the water lot. But when you apply the future road to it, it actually covers over most of the contamination, which is good news. So these are kind of the main conclusions are that we have about 2.8 acres of contamination, but a lot of it can be rectified through either capping or asphalt. The area that's down in the panhandle requires a little more investigation because of the phenols. And then on the water lot, we need to do this detailed risk assessment before we can do future subdivision on the property. So this year, what we're looking at doing is finalizing the groundwater and vapor samples and gain this flow-through status for that panhandle piece, and that'll allow us to have the upland ready to go. But in order to finish that, we have to get the water lot rectified. So that's that marine area. The work is $210,000, and it's matched with a grant, so it's $150,000 and $60,000 with the grant. What we need to do at this time is actually get the master plan process going, because the master plan directs how the cleanup will go, and that's kind of, remediation plans require us to have a master plan for the property in place. So that's where we're at. Martin can answer any of the tough questions you might have.
I've got a million of them for you.
Great.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks, appreciate that. Just on page 39, on the development considerations for the roadway where the 3 purple blobs are or whatever.
Yep.
And it indicates liability with original polluter who is known to MOE. So does that mitigate our liability? Is that what that suggests, or could you help me with that, please?
It's a bit complicated because that area had what's called a certificate of compliance, a one-time application done by SEPA, which was the old mill there, which was approved by the Ministry of Environment. One of the conditions on the certificate was, at that time the province owned that property before the port bought it, so one of the conditions was that they put that contamination on land titles. They never did, so although they did approve that area for a certificate, so there wouldn't be any liability if you developed the way you are right now, just putting a road through, the only thing we were saying about management was if a worker goes in there, there's going to be some safeguards as far as safety and, health and safety. That's about it.
So essentially what you're saying, don't disturb that, leave it as a road, and don't unrest that.
Yeah,
because then we are liable.
Yeah, because that certificate of compliance on that property is for basically, as you can see right now, a paved area. And it goes back onto the old SEPA site.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I was just, when I was reading this report the other day, and is this the land that's earmarked for, for the maybe ferry?
Part of it, yes.
So I'm just curious on before we spend any money on any of this contamination or anything, should we just wait till things are locked up? Because it seems like we have the cart a little bit ahead of quite a bit ahead of the horse here. It's just my observation and my view. And secondly, the bridge piece that's earmarked for whatever $6, $7, $8 million. When I seen the gentleman's map overview, I seen a lot of better options of roadways instead of spending more money in the future. I'm probably way off topic, but nevertheless, we're talking about the site. So I just think we should be paying anything until there's stuff locked up and more solidified, which in my view would be common sense. Thank you.
Mr. Swaby.
So, Your Worship, not only do we have direction from Council in terms of the potential for a ferry terminal, it's important that we did the work and continue with the work to move forward with the land deal with the regional district, because this is a joint purchase with the regional district for their transit exchange, which will be on this location, and we needed to understand the issues related to the dirt before we can finalize that.
Okay, just to conclude, Your Worship, and that'll be it, is that reminded me, Mr. Swaby, that it's not for this table, but our RDN meeting, I couldn't, in my view, think of a worse location for a bus station, considering in fact it's one of the last waterfront properties probably on the west coast. So, but obviously there were earlier decisions made, and if are they stuck? Are we stuck with previous decisions?
Your Worship, stuck is probably never say never, but that's the current direction that staff has.
Thanks.
That was given to you by council.
And the board, Your Worship, for their staff.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question on the contamination that is where the pallet store used to be. Did you guys find anything there, or was that just number 11?
Your Worship, to answer that one, could you repeat the question on that specific site?
Did you find any contamination in that area?
No, that area was fairly clean. Didn't have the coal waste, chromium impacts. We're still evaluating one thing because there was some hydrocarbons, and all we're doing is going back and doing a second round of soil vapor sampling. So there's really not much there.
But Your Worship, we did find significant archaeological issues associated with that site.
Okay, so if we actually wanted to use that site temporarily right now, we could?
Yes, I believe we could.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
The technical part of it, and I appreciate it. The half-life of these volatile organic compounds, when were they put in the ground? Do we have any estimates on that? And that will reduce some of our impact and some of our treatment. But just capping it now, we'll have to ditch and cap? And what is the half-life on some of these?
Your Worship, just to give you an idea, you have a good point, because the groundwater back in 2009 in that area, we're talking about the phenolics there by the SEPA mill, was above the standards, and now it's below the standards, so it is degrading over time, and that's what that certificate of compliance was based on. It was a risk-based. Over time, it's going to clean up.
Time-reduced risk.
Yeah, natural attenuation, it's called.
So, and a follow-up on that, and the chlorine phenols, are they all from preservatives?
Your Worship, we believe most of those areas because we traced, if you look on that plan, you can see a shadow of a long, narrow structure going towards number 3. That's the old green chain from the SEPA mill. And then on the lower one down on the south side, I think it may be related to because it's more superficial impacts, and it's related to storage of treated lumber from maybe, could be the other mill over time.
There was a dip trough there. Is that where that dip trough was?
Yeah, and that structure is I believe it's a dip tank at the end of it, because we did find a deeper area in that, right at the end of that green chain.
At the end of the chain. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff. Page 42 of the report under next steps. I was just curious about the third bullet down, obtaining a flow-through status. If you could, just for my benefit, explain what that is and how you would obtain it.
Your Worship, a flow-through status, because that area is, and that's 3B on the map you're seeing right now, that's where we've found the deepest contamination, the dip tank, the green chain. So to limit your liability in the future, we felt we would investigate with the Ministry of Environment of getting what's called a flow-through status, which states the impacts are coming from off-site. And by getting that status, it limits your liability. It goes to even though in this province polluter pays anyway, but it gives you more concrete feeling that you're not liable. And that's what that is. And why you have to do more work to get that status is because groundwater usually flows downhill. However, on this site at high tide, it flows back.
Thank you.
All right then. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. So you were tasked with the responsibility to do a DSI, detailed site investigation on contamination. You made a remark that on the pallet site, you discovered significant archaeological findings. Somebody over there made that comment. Is there anything that we need to know about the significant archaeological findings that has been discovered in the process of clearing that site?
Your Worship, I believe I'd have to revisit the memo that I did provide, I think, to Council a while ago, but we worked with an archaeological company and the First Nations, and it was a known mitten site for former settlement in that area.
Thank you, sir. So you'll resend that information that you provided us previously?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a note on, Your Worship, under the DSI that we completed under the scope of work, it's not archaeological. This was done during some construction.
Yeah, it was done during the. It was done during the demolition of Island Pallet when they were digging the foundations out. They uncovered the midden. So it wasn't, the two projects were happening at the same time, but it was the demolition project that uncovered it.
Thank you. No further speakers. We need a motion that receive.
Receive the information report pertaining to the detailed site investigation results summary for 1 Port Drive.
Seconder? Very good. Thank you. No further speakers. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item. Development marriage permit number DVP 252 at 614 Lambert Avenue. To obtain council authorization to permit lot frontage variances in order to facilitate subdivision of one residential lot into 10 parcels within the Harewood neighborhood. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak to respect to DVP 252. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that wishes to speak concerning DVP 252? Seeing none, we have someone to move the recommendation. So moved. Seconder? Second. Seeing no speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item. Rezoning application number RA 340 at 100 12th Street. Purpose to present a rezoning application for property located at 112th Street to rezone the subject property from single dwelling residential R1 to Community Service 1, CS1, in order to facilitate construction of a personal care facility. Staff recommendation is that Council receive the information in the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2015 4500-074. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Yoakum. Seconder? Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Any speakers on that one? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're going to require two bylaws.
Move the zoning amendment bylaw 2015 number 4500, that is 074 RA 340, to rezone 112th Street from single dwelling residential R1 to Community Service 1, CS1, pass first reading.
Second? Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Seeing no speakers, all those in favor?
I move the
Opposed?
zoning amendment bylaw 2015 number 4500.074 pass second reading. A bit fast, eh?
Yes. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Seeing no speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, G, unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 57. Requested the Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies for the properties listed below. So the first one is, well, there's going to be a recommendation that Council instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the first one, which is 145 Prideaux Street? Anyone wishing to speak to 145 Prideaux Street? Seeing none. 762 Townsite Road. Anyone wishing to speak to 762 Townsite Road? Seeing none. Third, 88 5th Street. Anyone wishing to speak to 88 5th Street? Seeing none. We need a mover.
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Bestwick. Seeing no speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next one. Under Community Services, 9A, unauthorized suites in a single-family dwelling, 2374 Mill Road. The purpose is to obtain council authorization to enforce the provisions of the Community Charter. Staff recommendation is that Council, pursuant to Section 72 and 73 of the Community Charter, order the owners at 2374 Mill Road to remove the unauthorized suites or bring the property into compliance within 30 days. So, can we have a mover, please? Move. Seconder? Councillor Hong, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Is this the first, staff, please, is this the first time that this property has been identified, designated, and brought to us?
Your Worship, it would have come forward previously for a notice to be registered on title. Because there's been no action at that time, it's now been forwarded for bylaw enforcement.
Thank you. How long ago? Like, has this been brought to us like in years past, or just this property?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I don't have the exact date, but I believe it was last fall that it came before council.
Thank you.
Yep. So, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item. Structural removals. To obtain council authorization to enforce the provisions of the Community Charter. It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the properties listed below. And those are 376 7th Street. Is there anyone wishing to speak to 376 7th Street? 716 Victoria Road. Please, sir.
Good evening.
Can we have your name and address for the records, please?
My name is Murray James Baldock, and I hold the paper on that piece of property on 716 Victoria.
Yes.
It's actually my son's property, but I hold the paper on it, so I am here. I'm not a public speaker by any means or stretch of the imagination, but I'd like to wish the best wishes for speedy recovery to your fallen comrade a few weeks ago with a heart problem.
Yes.
Because I deal with those things myself. I have cancer, COPD, 2 leaky valves in my heart, and I would like to ask for as much time as possible to remove the property that we're talking about here. Mainly because I don't deal well with when it's cold or damp, and I would like to get into the summer months this year and be basically the foreman that's running the hazmat, not running it, but overseeing the hazmat crew and the demolition crew during non-inclement weather. There's more here. The fire was arson. My son had no insurance on the property, and he's 47 years old, and everything he ever owned and got together was there, period. Now here's a guy that looks like he just walked into Bellevue Village, got dressed and walked out now, because that's all he owns, period. He's currently residing with me. I don't know if any of you have been through this, but somebody that's been away from you for 31 years and moving back into your residence is a little bit trying for all parties. I hope you understand. He's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because he believes that somebody tried to kill him in this particular fire. Now, he wasn't in the house at the time. He had just left. And he came back an hour and a half later to find the police and the fire department there. Near and dear to his heart were his Siamese cats, which were all killed in the fire. And again, all his musical instruments, because that's the course in life that he chose, was to be a musician. And he actually had everything together to go and put on stage shows. And he just about had it all together to rent it all. Well, it all was gone in the fire. So the next line of visiting people was victim services. Well, this seemed to be some of my friends said this is a really good route to go because nobody's more victim than him. Well, after a couple of letters from them and back and forth, Merry Christmas, just before Christmas, and I can almost recite word for word the last paragraph of a two-page letter from Victim Services was, you're not considered a victim unless you were in the house while it burned. Now, to me, that means either you're a burn victim in the hospital later or you're dead. But all this being said, I plan on complying with the city's rules when I can take this place down. And I just hope you can give me the time to do it. Thank you very much for listening.
So are you going to be able to comply in the time that's on this, or are you looking for additional time?
I'm asking for additional time.
Okay.
I would like to get into the summer months where I can just feel better physically.
Okay, so great. Thank you very much. Any questions for the speaker? Councillor Bestwick?
Not a question. I just, thank you for coming and explaining your situation and position to us.
Yes.
It's not all that often that people will come and explain their situation and their hardship all that often. So thank you for coming in and doing that. And once you leave the podium, I'll just ask staff a question. Thank you, Mr. Baldock.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No further questions for the...
Okay.
Thank you very
so
much.
will I just wait till someone contacts me?
I expect that there may be a motion coming forward, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask staff a question. Do we have any thought of what the cost to remove this structure is?
Yes, Your Worship. We have a cost supplied by the father of the owner.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. Thank you.
He's placed it at $10,000. We don't have information ourselves as to the actual cost. There was indications that they would look to move forward, but as described here at the podium, they're not able to. And I don't see them being able to, whether it's 2 months or 3 months or 4 months from now. I think it does cause them hardship, and they're not able to achieve the demolition at this time. We are in contact, or have been in contact with the mortgage holder, and they're following this presentation before council or decision by council, and they would likely take action then to complete the required removal, if that was council's wishes.
The mortgage holder.
Thank you. Could I just ask another question?
Certainly.
So if we were to grant an extension, how would that alter or change the mortgage holder's position?
They would follow the directions of council. What it does is it does leave the house in a dilapidated or a problematic condition for the neighborhood for longer. But, you know, if council feels it's reasonable, then by all means.
Thank you.
Councillor Hong. Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the staff. How does this affect the neighboring? Have we heard from what the neighbors are saying?
In this case, Your Worship, to Councillor Hong, in this case, this one was brought forward from the fire department, but what we've been seeing for about the last 2 years, the neighborhood network brought a series of properties to us for the same types of incident of fire. What happens with a fire-damaged house is that it anchors usually squatting behavior, and there's problems with thefts and persons coming onto the property because it's then not occupied. So what you get then is the neighborhoods want to have it dealt with, and they look to and turn to the city to look under the community charter for actions to deal with that property. So we become involved with it. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there on the question.
What the neighbors were saying.
So we don't have an actual neighbor complaint on this one. We have it identified through that process of when we get a fire that's burnt out or caused damage to a house. What we do is now we bring it forward. We work with the owner to see whether they're working with their insurance company. We see if there's success. In this one, there hasn't been success on the insurance aspect, and there hasn't been the ability to this point in time for the owner to actually take action either. And we've had the file since last August. So what we're doing is then taking action to bring it to resolution in the most expedient way possible with all conditions considered.
Thank you. Is it possible to ask the delegation a question now? Or?
Certainly. Could you come back down to the podium, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question now. So why do you need this extension if somebody else is doing the work? Right.
First off, you have to get hazmat. Just to get hazmat to come and look at it, just to look, not touch, look, is $1,500 to $2,000. And then they give you a bill of what hazmat will charge you to do hazmat removal, and you take that to the city, and for $40 you get a demolition permit and a surety of $1,000, and I've been quoted $10,338 to demo the place. So there are steps that have to be taken, and there are also costs involved.
I'm just still a little confused on why you needed the time extension. He was saying that he needed to get better, and the weather is to be better so he can do it.
It's time.
I'm confused on time for what? Your reason didn't seem to make sense to me when you said that you wanted to be better when the summer months were to come to do the work, but you're not doing the work. So isn't it sooner?
I can't believe how much work's been done there in the last 6 months. There was a bylaws officer that was by. It was saying, my son's a hoarder. The place was disgusting with crap everywhere. There's probably been $3,000 to $4,000 worth of dump charges of him removing crap from the property in the last 3 to 4 months.
Okay, but
it all has to begin somewhere, right?
Yeah, but you're saying that the mortgage lender is willing to remortgage. So what are we waiting for? Why don't we get them to remortgage next week?
As soon as I get the money, we can roll.
Isn't that what a mortgage is? They give you money? So I'm confused on why you need money.
I just personally like to do it in better weather. It's totally up to you, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
I guess this could be to the delegation. I'm just wondering, is the house boarded up and secured right
totally.
now? And it's secured to the
Totally secure.
satisfaction of?
Yes. It's secured so no one can get in, but it's been deemed uninhabitable because it's not the exterior is burnt, it's all the interior that's burnt.
I understand. Thank you.
I mean, he's gotten rid of all the crap from the inside, like couches and bed and all the things that were speakers and, well, burnt out everything. Everything that he had left from his mother.
Okay. I just really wanted to confirm that it was secure.
Right. As I say, it's existential amount of money has been taken to the dump.
Thank you. Don't go away. Councillor Pratt.
I'm just wondering, how much time are you asking for?
I'd like to get into the summer months, and then it'll be gone, and a new structure a permit will be taken out, and a new structure built.
So when you say the summer months, do you mean to the end of summer, to the end of August? What are you looking
I
at?
plan completion of the new structure by the end of summer.
Okay.
Like.
Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
So then that would be July 1st. Does that sound reasonable? July 1st?
Sure.
Okay. Kind of the beginning of the summer from where I sit, yeah. Okay. So, what's council's pleasure? Do we wish to give the applicant an extension for that time? Councillor Beswick.
Yes, I would move that we provide the applicant up to 6 months to proceed in accordance with our 72, 73, 74 of the community charter.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Certainly, thank you. Councillor Hong.
I can't agree with that unless I'm getting assurances that this is going to be on the mortgage. Like you're telling me that you're going to build a house from end of July till summer to build an entire new structure. How is that humanly possible? I would love to build a house in 2 months. So unless I get assurances that this mortgage is going to go through and there is a process, I can't support it. It's just going to sit there derelict, and what's going to come 6 months from now is going to come back, and we're going to have the same situation. Now we've had a property sitting there since August of 2014. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. I'm not trying to defend the applicant here, but for me, I can only imagine the devastation of an incident like this in August. It's not that long ago. And we've had many buildings that have sat derelict for considerably longer than August until now, or August until July in this city, and we've given people second chances and second opportunities. What will happen if this isn't rectified by July 1st or whatever that date is? Yes, then it'll come back. Yes, there won't be a third chance to the applicant here, and I hope that the applicant here takes this extremely seriously, which he obviously is. He's here, sat here all evening to get a second chance, and so I'm willing to allow that process to take place, and that's my position.
Thing is, we're debating a motion.
Well, last time he sat down twice already.
I know,
Keep asking
it's
him
just
to stand
that
up again.
it is now at the stage where we have a motion on the floor and we're
Does
discussing.
Yes, okay, let's move receive the delegation. Do we have a second? Second, okay, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. You may sit down, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Worship, maybe if I can just confirm that the motion that is on the floor, you're only dealing with 716 Victoria Road in this motion.
Correct.
And the motion includes 1, 2, and 3, with the change being up to 6 months rather than 30 days.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I agree with Councillor Bestwick. I appreciate the fact that the applicant would take the time to come and tell us his background, and I think this is a situation where I'm certainly prepared to show some compassion with our city bylaws and grant the extension. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
I just want to point that it wasn't about compassion, it was about a plan of action. And that's what I'm not happy with, an extension without a plan of action. I think we as a council need to standardize our processes. If we're going to be doing this all the time, I would like to see something that's going to happen, and the time frame that we give him, the one day after that isn't done, we are going to demolish it and build them, because we've actually did the exact same thing with the conference center with Councillor Fuller saying that as of May 31st afterwards, if they do not comply, we're going to bring this motion forward. So,
excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Point of order.
Sorry about that. So I just want to have a set standard that we know what we're going to be doing with other ones. So when other people come towards this, that is something that's going to be set as a standard. Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Pratt.
I believe that we have given extensions in the past to other people. In fact, other people have come to council and asked for an extension, and we've given it, and I'm certainly in favor of giving an extension in this case, and hopefully within the 6 months the gentleman can do what he needs to do, and we can all move forward.
Thank you. So, seeing no further speakers, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move the recommendations on 376 7th Street.
Second? Got a seconder. No speakers? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, property maintenance bylaw number 1990, number 3704. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance for the following property: 1512 Frew Road. Garbage, construction waste, old metal, old plastic, and miscellaneous debris. Anyone wishing to speak to 1512 Frew Street?
Is it bad that I see stuff I can use?
It's called resource recycling. So, seeing no one, we need a staff recommendation. Motion that council, pursuant to property maintenance bylaw number 1990-3704, direct the owners of the following property to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at owner's cost. That's at 1512 Frew Road. So moved. Seconder? Seconder? Seeing no speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item. Bylaws, none.
No. So was those two removed?
Is that?
Were the other two?
The other two were removed.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No bylaws, none. No correspondence, no council appointments, no motion, other business. Question period, please.
Fred Taylor of 204 Emery Way. In listening to the conversation tonight about keeping agendas, I believe you were told that they got them back for the last 24 years. Is that correct, please? So when we adopt a bylaw, the council of the day in 1990, 24 roughly years ago, and it says the retention for the agendas is 3 years live, 4 years storage. Why has that not been followed? Or how much more of the bylaw has been followed by staff? Apparently it hasn't been. If you've got them, you haven't been throwing them out after 7 years, which the bylaw says.
It's a good point, Your Worship. There is a backlog, and that's one of the reasons why there was a position created a couple of years ago, the records management clerk, because of that backlog. And I think Councillor Kipp mentioned it earlier with all the physical records and the volume that we have. And that's what we're going through now. And it is important to follow a retention schedule. But you've identified it, Mr. Taylor. It wasn't followed in the day. And now we're looking back and looking to retain those.
My last question, please, is quite a bit of discussion about financial affairs of the city. And I've spoken a few times. You tried to look at a motion of 2% reduction. What about the excess money that you excellent staff have generated usually every year that could equal more than 2% going to general revenue instead of reserve pots again to solve the problem right away of no increase in taxes, maybe even a decrease?
You mean surplus?
The surplus, yes,
Yearly
from
surplus.
2014.
Last year was 2.4 million?
It hasn't been announced and you haven't voted what to do with it yet.
Thank you.
When that report comes by, instead of just dumping it back in reserves that you've already put money aside in those reserves in 2014 and 2015, why doesn't it go to general revenue and reduce the taxes maybe 5%?
Thank you.
This is probably just a niggly little question.
For the record, Mr. Fuller.
Pardon me?
For the record. Name and address.
Oh,
Thank you.
3350 Hammond Bay Road.
Thank you.
I was reading over the agenda today, and I was wondering if staff could possibly tell me if this is a typo or not. It's on page 20, and it has to do with 8A, Corporate Services, the financial plan. And it states, the City of Nanaimo will attempt to keep the proportional share of revenue from property taxes at a level similar to the average of comparable municipalities. I'm just having a lot of problems with the word similar to the average of comparable municipalities. Is this a typo or is this for real?
I would suggest it's for real.
Why are we comparing ourselves to other municipalities? in the case of taxation? Should we not be striving to be better than other municipalities? In other words, above average. Thank you.
Or below average, if I like to say, below the average of taxation.
Because I'm not Kelowna, I'm not Kamloops, I'm not Prince George, I'm Nanaimo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Boland, 3165 King Richard Drive. I would like to inquire whether the definition of service levels, which seem to be might be seriously impacted if we reduce taxes, that service level included grants and exemptions. I haven't heard too much about those, but I know they were about 8 or 9% of our taxes in 2013. Haven't seen the 2014. And not that I am suggesting that we get rid of all of them, but perhaps it may be time to start looking at saying maybe we should pare 10 or 20% a year on some of these things that we haven't been looking at too closely and get some money there. So is that, when one is speaking of service levels, is that one of the service levels that we're talking about?
Councilor Westwick.
When I asked for the reduction to come back, to staff to come back, I asked for no limitations.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the definition of service levels, though, was the only thing left seemed to be service levels, and are grants and exemptions included in service levels?
From my perspective, no limitations would include
okay.
permissive tax exemptions, grants, and otherwise.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'm only speaking for myself.
Okay. I thought I might hear from the city manager his definition when he spoke about service levels, whether that was included.
Well, I think you need to ask council that, and because we're the ones that are going to give him the instruction. So you're at the right place.
Okay.
And I think you got the right answer.
Okay. One other quick one on minutes, since we were dealing with minutes and agendas this evening. Why do we not put out the minutes within a couple of days of the meeting taking place? They can be pending for 2 weeks as well as they can be pending for 3 weeks or 1 week or whatever. I suspect that minutes are completed within a day or two of a meeting, and that is there a reason why we don't put them out and just let them be pending until they come before council?
Would we not have to change our procedure bylaw to reflect that?
Yeah, I don't know whether we need to change the procedure bylaw, or council would need to change the procedure bylaw. I'd be reluctant to proceed just on the fly right now, especially with drafts, because drafts can often be read one way and taken as the truth, and then at the next council meeting, it's wrong. Something wasn't captured right or not. So trying to limit the exposure to draft, especially once we've had the opportunity to review it and then send it to council, etc. But you're right, it doesn't take long to actually write them up, but there is a review process to make sure that it's correct. And
well, I'm curious at that, because I know that many times I will go myself to the videos and try to figure out exactly what it was that happened and what was stated and what was the exact motion. And it would be very useful, I think, to citizens to be able to get that basic information without having to go hunt.
If I could just add, sometimes there is a request from, they want a certified copy of a resolution. So what we do is we put draft all over it, right? Just to make sure if financial institution, whoever needs it, there's the draft. And then we certify that as the corporate seal. But that's about the level of, I guess, for the draft portion of it until it goes to council, because it's council's minutes.
So, Your Worship, that's a good example of a service level, how quickly we can provide the minutes to you.
Okay, maybe I can follow that different procedure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just make, well, I just want to make a comment. Could we, to Mr. Jackson, if they just went on as unadopted?
If they go onto the website, sorry?
Yeah, if they were just unadopted until we've adopted them, so people would know that these are the unadopted minutes?
I guess it's not a best management practice to do that, but it is certainly within council's pleasure if that's the direction you want to. But then you'd have these drafts out there.
Your Worship, I would suggest that you don't do that and that we give that some thought before we just jump into doing that with the amount of scrutiny that the bloggers and the media put on getting the information, that we should do it right before we produce them.
Yeah, it was a question about process. It wasn't a motion to do it. It's just a question about it, because we get minutes from Parks, Recreation and Culture that are unadopted, sometimes 2 months, 3 months after the meeting, and then we'll get the adopted ones. So it's the only reason I'm thinking that it might solve what might be a concern or a problem or an issue. So I asked the question.
Councillor Kipp.
Well, yeah, we do get Parks and Rec because they may not have a meeting. The Athletic Commission agendas used to go. So by putting them out with unadopted on them,
exactly,
it would be like semi-transparency. And we'd be starting to reach towards transparency, having them out early. And if people saw a mistake in them, they could ask for corrections or bring it forward to the next agenda when we go to adopt them, and it would give out a form of transparency.
That really was my point. By changing your meetings, as I understand it now, you're going to have the agenda out a week ahead of time. And so the minutes that you've been included in agendas can be on that same cycle. And because they are unadopted at that time, I just don't understand why we need to wait 2 weeks, which is, because of the cycle, is 2 weeks before you really see the minutes of a meeting and can see exactly what the motion was, for example, unless I call up and ask for a special copy, which I think might be a bother as well. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Don't leave, Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment from Mr. Boland. Thank you for presenting this evening. Is in regards to your question around the services and tax cuts, etc. Is I don't view the exercise going to be strictly not around the strictly services. I totally concur around the permissive tax exemptions comment. I believe we're around 7.3 to 7.6 million in that area, and this is reading the Kelowna Core Review recently, and they're just under 3 million in that category. So there's probably room for some alternative suggestions, but also it doesn't just got to be the services, in my view. We got to get creative and get lean in certain areas, and maybe from top level down, etc. So I look forward to the variety of suggestions from Mr. Swaby besides just services. Services can't just be automatic default. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Brennan.
I was just going to say that in terms of the minutes, the best practices, I'm sure you would agree, would be to publicize those minutes that, because they are council's minutes, that council has agreed are correct. And I wouldn't want to see them out there without that seal that council says these are correct, which if that were the case, you would not have them a week later. You would have to wait 2 weeks later. So, which I don't think is a hardship. I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable business practice that certain things get done on a certain time frame, and that we want to use best practices, and we want to be able to be certain that the minutes that we publicize are those that are confirmed by council to be correct.
I agree with you to the extent, but I'm afraid you're going to find that there are a lot of people, because of someone raised here, there are bloggers and all kinds of people who may be writing all kinds of nonsense about what you said or happened in a meeting, and tough it out.
Stiff upper lip, yep. Suck it up.
Councillor Kipp.
Mr. Boland, so yes. Like today, when I arrived here at this agenda, my third thing on the fourth thing was the adoption of the minutes. So these are circulated, unadopted minutes.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
And so they were put out, and they will be put out 1 week in advance.
Right.
So we do circulate unadopted
Yeah,
minutes
exactly,
currently.
exactly.
That are unadopted, and the public has access to them, right?
Yes.
So when they're done, just throwing them up on the web would be no different than including them in an agenda that's not really part of our business. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's
Seeing no
already there.
further
It's in
speakers.
Send them out. Semi-transparent. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Seconder. All those in favor? We adjourned.
All sorts.